All right. In the spirit of this morning's message, before we get started, we have to get ready. So, I want you all to take a minute and just stretch. Stretch out. Loosen up. Sorry, we don't have money in the budget for a massage therapist to come in. Shake yourselves out. Smile at your neighbor. You can stand up if you want to shake out your legs. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find one of these small bottles near you. There's a couple spread out through the sanctuary. And in these bottles, it's a mixture of water and witch hazel and a few essential oils. Okay? I want you to shake it up. You'll have to share, so you'll have to get up and move around whether you like it or not. So shake it up a bit, and then I just want you to spray a little bit. Look around you. There's some all over the place. Ask your neighbor before you spray it. You can spray it on your hand or your wrist or just in the air around you. And this week's free lunch or dinner is brought to you by if you can name 2 of the 3 scents that are in here. So you can take your time. Let me know by the end of service what you think it is. So, yeah. So just spray it around. And you can use these throughout the course of the service whenever you need to. Use as much or as little as you want, especially if you feel yourself getting a little bit drowsy. Or you see your neighbor maybe falling asleep. Feel free to just give them a little squirt of rejuvenating energy. Because I will give you a hint. This particular blend of oils is supposed to encourage alertness and focus. So we'll see how this works, right? This is my little trick. There you go. These are the things they don't teach us in seminary. But, yeah, spray it. Think about what you smell. All right. This is just a little something to help us get ready and to help set the mood, if you will, as we continue our journey through Esther. This morning, Esther takes us into this harem of a group of women undergoing all sorts of treatments with lotions and spices and oils. Okay, are you ready to go now? All right, okay, good. Now, if I had $1 for every time someone in our household asked the question, "Are you ready to go?" I would be a very rich woman. I don't know how many of you can relate to this. Would you also be rich along with me? No. And by our house, I mean just David and I, okay? We're not even talking about growing up with 4 kids. This is just David and I. But as is our habit, David and I tend to go against the stereotypical grain. And who is usually ready to go and who is not is a little bit different than what you might think. You see, I am the one that is always standing with my hand on my hip and my hand on the doorknob, and I am the one asking, "David, are you ready to go?" And I am the one that gets frustrated when he says yes, and yet 15 minutes later we still have not left. You see, his idea and my idea of what ready to go means are very, very different. And don't worry, I asked his permission to share this, so I'm not telling stories just because he's not here. You see, to me, ready to go means ready to walk out of the door. That's what being ready to go means. So what I am really asking is, are you ready to walk out the door? Ready to physically move? But that's not how my amazing husband hears the question. See, he has a very different relationship with time and with change and with movement. He will answer my question with a very sincere yes. I know he's not just stringing me along. He really means that he is ready to go, even when he is nowhere near ready to walk out of the door. Bless his heart. Because for him, being ready to go is a state of mind. It is not necessarily tied to any physical movement and action. So when he says he is ready to go, what he's really saying is that he has mentally transitioned from what he was doing and is now ready to start considering what comes next, which may involve a shower. It may involve a change of clothes. I don't know. And it only took us a few years of marriage to figure this out, right? It's a learning experience. And it's not to say, even though we figured it out, it's still not frustrating at times. But it points to the complicated truth that getting ready to go, getting ready for the next thing, happens in stages. That getting ready to go is as much a mental undertaking as it is a physical action. And our scripture reading this morning gives us a complicated picture of what it meant for a group of women to get ready for what came next. The setup for today's reading stems from what happened last week. If you remember, having banished Queen Vashti for refusing to come put on a show at his banquet, the king now finds himself feeling a little lonely. Poor King Ahasuerus. So, one of his royal advisors suggests that they bring in all the available young women from the kingdom, and the king can try them all out and see which one he likes. Ahasuerus thinks that this is a great idea. I mean, why not? So all these women are brought in and they undergo this period of preparation. We're told how this process lasted a full 12 months. A full year. 6 months of oil and myrrh, followed by 6 months of lotion and spices. I'll give you a hint. One of the scents is not myrrh, so don't think you can cheat. Now, I don't know about you, but this little detail of 6 months of preparation leaves me with so many questions, right? How many of you shook your head when you heard 6 months of oil and myrrh and then followed by 60? I can't even keep it straight. What would happen in those 12 months? What exactly does this look like? Was it essentially a year-long spa treatment? 12 months of just a series of body wraps and massages and facials and peels and pedicures? Or was it more of kind of a massage therapy class? You know, these women are learning how to use these lotions and oils on another person for the sake of learning how to please the king, because that is their sole purpose, right? Now, some scholars have argued that the women were probably instructed on matters of court etiquette and royal protocol during this time, just in case they happened to be the one chosen to replace Vashti as queen. But that is just speculation, because the text only says 6 months of oil and myrrh. See, I have to rely on you guys. And then 6 months of lotion and spices. There's no reference to etiquette or protocol or anything like that. Trying to fill this 12 months with anything that makes sense goes back to what we talked about last week. And it's an attempt to make Esther appear more proper or historical, to make her less funny. Because 12 months of oil and lotion and spices and myrrh is funny, right? You can laugh at what they have to go through. Because in reality, this ridiculous description of the standard beauty treatments, as we're told, is another example of the author lampooning the dominant culture of the time, that this was their standard treatment. It's similar to what we saw in our last week's reading with the over-the-top opulent description that characterized the court in the first scene, in the first chapter. Again, it's this chance for the displaced Jewish community to poke fun at the Persian Empire, to laugh at how their rulers and captors are such a gluttonous culture, that they are preoccupied with appearances, they're driven by carnal desires, and they're ruled by a drunken buffoon who goes along with what anyone suggests to him at any time. Last week he went along with the suggestion to banish Vashti, and this week he goes along with the suggestion to try out all the local beauties. Another indication that this was a story told by the Jewish people to ease the burden of living under the Persian rule is the simple fact that rulers of massive empires didn't pick their queens based on beauty pageants and a grown-up sleepover contest. Right? The fact that queens were strategically chosen and marriages were arranged as a matter of political alliances is often glossed over by those who would try to make Esther sound more proper or historical. This is just a funny situation. And despite how eerily familiar and modern this scene seems, if we imagine Ahasuerus giving Esther a red rose, right, instead of crowning her with the royal diadem, the king wouldn't really pick a queen like he was on an ancient version of The Bachelor, even though they are both created for similar entertainment effect. But this matter of such an extensive preparation period is more than just a throwaway laugh line to an ancient audience. This idea of what it means to get ready really resonated with me, especially, as I said before, we're finishing up these preparations for our annual meeting in 2 weeks. And we're starting to think about and to get ready for what comes next. But before we can get into that, before we can turn our attention to get ready for what God wants us to do as a church, we first must acknowledge the problematic nature of what happened to that group of young women in our reading this morning. Because it's an all too common occurrence even today. I'd be doing a disservice to them. I say we have to acknowledge what happened to them because none of them in this story have any agency in the matter. They are all subject to the whim of the king, even Esther. The namesake of this book doesn't have a voice in this section. Instead, we watch as she is handed off first from her father and then to her uncle, from her uncle to the royal eunuch, from the royal eunuch to the king. She has no voice in this section. She's just handed off. And this part of the story reminds us that sometimes we may feel like we have no say in our own story. Because that's probably how most of the Jewish people felt about living as displaced people under Persian rule. So many things happen to us that are out of our control. But that doesn't mean that we don't have control of how we respond to the situation. The Jewish people responded by telling this funny story about the Persian court, in which two of their own become the heroes of the story. Esther gets the red rose and becomes queen, while in a part of the story that we didn't read, Mordecai becomes the best of the king's guards by discovering and stopping a plot to kill the king. How many of you have read Esther recently and know what I'm talking about? How Mordecai more hands are going up. I'm going to keep asking. every week. Shame you into raising your hand. Or you could lie. I don't know. It's between you and God. But I'm going to keep asking and see if we can get more hands up before we're done. There's so many good parts of the story we just couldn't cover. But the fact is that things happen that are out of your control. The story of Esther shows us that it is always possible to own your own story in the end. I just want to spend a few minutes with this idea of what it means to get ready. To get ready for what comes next. Because it's a very live issue. God is always calling us into an ever unfolding future. Unfortunately, it probably won't involve 12 months of spa treatments. Though maybe that's something we can look into for next year's budget. I don't know. Maybe. Have a massage table on hand every Tuesday. But following God usually does require a softening in us. An ease of tension that keeps us stuck where we are. Following God requires a suppleness that will allow us to embrace the new thing that God is doing. The uncertain future that is unfolding before us. And as I said before, getting ready is always both a mental undertaking and a physical action. And as I've been thinking about this coming year, as I get ready to celebrate the end of my second year here, I'm excited about what the next year holds. I hope to do a little of both, the mental work and the physical activity, over the next year as we discern and we dream together the plans that God has for us. Through our preparation, may we find favor with the one who calls us beloved, the one who bestows every good gift with royal abandonment and loves us beyond measure. God is ready to go. Are we? Amen.